Suddenly there came a sound from heaven, as of a rushing mighty wind.
Somebody tell me!
Welcome to a special edition of In Conversation. My name is Simon Barrett. I will be presenting a series of programs on the forthcoming European elections. Over this series we'll be interviewing representatives from the main political parties to engage on their views on Europe, and so that you, the viewers, know the issues that are at stake. And today I'm going to be interviewing Stephen Scott Fawcett from the UK Independence Party. Stephen, welcome to the programme.
Hello, Simon.
Hello, how you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you as well. Please sit down. So, Stephen, we've had conversations before the programme starts, and you've got an incredible background. You're a professional football player, you've climbed Mount Everest, and you've walked across the South Pole. Why do you want to get involved in politics?
Because politics are so important to our daily lives, and I've been very preoccupied in doing very selfish things away from this country and away from my ordinary life. So perhaps it's time I grew up a bit and got involved in what really matters in getting on with improving our lot in this life, both in this country and abroad.
So why do you feel called to politics?
Why do I feel called to politics? I just feel that it's time. I'm in my midlife, and I've had a lot of experience, I have to say, in running a business and bringing up children and things of that nature, and I feel that the time has come to perhaps use my knowledge and my expertise in a meaningful way, and politics has to be the vehicle.
So why did you choose the UK Independence Party?
Well, the United Kingdom Independence Party is in fact the only political party in this country that espouses the need to leave completely the European Union, and that is something I really strongly believe in for reasons that I can perhaps explain in due course. The other parties do not hold that view. The Conservative Party, of which in the past I have voted for, I've been a member of and voted for, is talking very much about the possibility of having a referendum on what we have called the Lisbon Treaty, but it's now renamed the Reform Treaty. But they will not entertain the idea whatsoever of leaving the European Union because they feel that we need to be in it. I take a completely different view. So the United Kingdom Independence Party, having looked very closely at their policies, not just the issue of Europe, but the general policies that we now have in place, I have been very impressed and excited by, and I had no hesitation in joining the party.
I mean, we're looking at, politics now, and the whole of these European elections have been overshadowed by the expenses row in the House of Commons and what have you, and for many of the viewers watching can be disillusioned by politics, switched off and say, look, these MPs are taking huge salaries, they're taking, and then they're, wasting our money on various expenses. Why should I vote? So what can you say to the viewers about why they should vote, and in particular, why should they vote for Ukip?
Well, I certainly will have to say that Westminster is indeed in crisis, and I think all of us involved in politics, interested in politics, and just ordinary folk must be really just amazed at what is beginning to happen, because I think there is a major sea change about to happen in the life of the politics in this country. But that said, why should people vote, and why should Christians consider it necessary to vote? I think the answer is pretty simple. God's kingdom includes everything, not just our churches and our prayer groups and our friends. It includes the whole world. It includes the universe. And politics is, whether we like it or not, the human way in which we progress things, the human way in which we make decisions. And effectively, at the end of the day, I think for Christians to be outside politics is a big mistake.
Okay. I mean, one of the issues, I mean, the UK Independence Party is not immune from these corruption scandals. I mean, we've had a recent case with Tom Wise, who was charged with fiddling accounts and money laundering. Isn't there a danger here that by voting UKIP, and UKIP become members of the European Parliament, that they go and vote, and because you don't believe in the whole European Union, so therefore there's a tendency then not to get involved in any of the discussions, not to turn up to any meetings, not to represent anything. And so therefore, how can, as a UKIP representative, can they advocate their voice for withdrawal from the European Union when they're not at any sessions, and how can they possibly stand and represent their constituencies if they're not attending the European Parliament?
I think that's a fair question, and it would be wrong for me to say that Ukip MEPs are 100% committed to attending plenary sessions and the other committees that exist in the European Union. There are actually over 8,000 committees that meet on a daily basis, and it's quite extraordinary. I think the real issue is that the fundamental point is that the European Union is an undemocratic body. It really is, and I can explain that in due course if you like. And we don't really want to be part of that process in a holistic way. What we do feel we must do as UKIP MEPs is to get into Europe and to have a good idea in principle as to how it's running, because the members of this country, members of the public of this country, aren't really being informed. So in a sense, I like to use the term we're Trojan politicians, we're Trojan horse politicians. We want to get into the European thing, the project as they call it, because we need to have first-hand information rather than second-hand. And by becoming members of the European Parliament, we can see in broad terms what's going on, clinch the main issues. We will certainly have a voice in all the issues as far as we can, but really our main objective is then to come back to our constituencies, our regions, and to explain to folk in this country exactly what Europe is all about, and actually not be accused of not really knowing.
I mean, there's a lot of confusion, particularly, I mean, we know where we stand when it comes down to actually voting for a general election. Because we know that if we elect an MP, they'll represent their constituency and therefore represent our interests, or supposedly represent our interests in Parliament. But the European Union is more complex. I mean, can you explain a little bit about the European Parliament, the European Commission, and how it works, so the viewers can have a better understanding of the dynamics of the European Union?
Thank you, Simon, for asking that question, because it is fundamental. A lot of people, if they're vaguely interested in voting on the 4th of June, will think and will know that they're actually voting for members of the European Parliament, in other words, for someone to become members of the European Parliament. And people may feel that that is a bit of democracy going on and that decisions are being made in the Parliament within the European Union. That in fact is not the case. There is a degree of democracy. It would be quite wrong for me to say there is no democracy. But actually, the running of the European Union is a layered process. And at the very top of that process, we have the European Council, which effectively are all the heads of state. So at the moment, there are 27 members. Our PM, our Prime Minister, is a member of the Council of Europe. And then just below that is what's called the Council of Ministers. And so if our health minister needs to talk to other European health ministers about health issues, they'll meet in their own little council. I have to tell you that these are all private meetings. We know nothing. Nobody in any part of the European Union knows what goes on in these meetings and the decision process that goes on. And then just below that, would you believe, there are, and you've heard about these people, the European commissioners. One person is elected from each member state, so there are 27 European commissioners, totally unelected. And I have to tell you, sometimes failed or has-been politicians, and I don't wish to mention names now because it's perhaps unfair, but and they're the ones, it is the European Commission who really decide on where Europe is going and what policy should be drawn up. Once they've got a blueprint in their own mind as to how they want to run the European Union, this is the commissioners, guess what? They then defer the various issues down to a whole labyrinth of committees. There are over 8,000 committees, each with their chairman, vice chairman, and fat pensions, I have to say that. All nice careers for these people, often expired politicians from around Europe. Again, I have to say that. And a whole process of directives and regulations emerge from these committees. And it's only when we've got to that point do the parliamentarians in Europe, the European Parliament, then have a say. In actual fact, issues which are considered quite minor by the upper echelons of the European Union process, they become regulations and are not discussed by the Parliament. They become law automatically, whether we like it or not. Directives, of which there are over 120,000 at the moment affecting our lives. You've heard about the shape of bananas business, but that's just a small sort of side show, really. Now, those directives are discussed and debated